Welcome, everyone. My name is Greg Alexander. I am the CEO of SBI, a sales and marketing consulting firm committed to helping you make your number. You are watching SBI TV. This is a monthly web TV show featuring guests just like you, executives trying to grow their revenues. By tuning in each month, you can peek behind the scenes and watch your peers discuss their strategies for making their numbers. On today's show, we have a very special guest. Chris Perry is the president of Global Sales, Marketing, and Client Solutions at Broadridge Financial Solutions, the leading provider of investor communications and solutions for wealth management, asset management, and capital market firms. Broadridge processes over $5 trillion in fixed income and equity trades per day. They help 90% of the world's public companies process proxy votes. They enable 2 billion multi-channel communications to investors per year, and they have a staggering 98% customer retention rate. The company does $2.6 billion in annual sales, has close to 7,000 employees, trades on the New York Stock Exchange, and has been in business for over 50 years. Prior to joining Broadridge, Chris spent 21 years at Thomson Reuters, and during that time became president of global sales and account management, overseeing 3,500 employees, and get this, was responsible for $7 billion in revenue. The reason I asked Chris to be on this show is he is the top executive in financial services industry, having held the largest job in the space at Thomson Reuters, and is now president of sales, marketing, and services at Broadridge. Quite frankly, there is not another executive in financial services with more experience than Chris. I feel this qualifies Chris as an expert on today's topic, getting the product group, the marketing department, and the sales team into strategic alignment with the CEO's strategy. I am very glad to welcome Chris Perry. Chris, thanks for coming on the show today.
Greg, my pleasure.
It's great to see you.
Nice to be here, thank you.
Have a seat. All right, so today's topic, strategic alignment. Getting all of these very busy executives with their own agendas to work in harmony together to make the number, okay? So our experience, in the last 3 years, we've been involved in about 100 sales strategy deployments. We also do extensive research on this subject. For example, our last survey had over 25,000 executives respond. And what we've learned is the difference, in our opinion, the number one difference between leaders that make the number and leaders that miss the number is this concept of strategic alignment. So what do I mean by that? Because it's an academic term. What I mean by that is the CEO has a strategy. You know, he says things like, these are the markets we're going to compete in. This is who we're going to compete against. You know, this is our sustained competitive advantage, et cetera. Following that is the product team. And they have to make sure that they're building products that people actually want to buy. They're building products that address the market problems of the target audience that the CEO has identified. And they're not just building things that they think is cool. One step below that is the marketing department, which says they've got to stimulate demand and attract the right type of buyers that actually have a need for those products. And then you get to sales. And sales has to turn that demand into actual revenue and provide a closed loop back up to the CEO that says, hey, this is how our strategy is resonating or not resonating within the marketplace. And sometimes we see this to be a very, very difficult thing to do. It's pretty easy to understand, but pulling it off is hard. So in your multi-decade career that you've had, have you seen companies that are both in alignment and out of alignment?
I absolutely have, Greg. I've experienced both of those things, and I think it starts where you suggested the CEO. CEOs have many really critical responsibilities, shareholders, boards, but the most important one in my mind in terms of operational execution is the alignment of the management team. And that comes from creating a mutualized set of goals and objectives. It's so important because you use the word yourself, agenda. I mean, human beings have agendas.
Yeah.
Ideally, those agendas are all aligned to create common goals. And when that happens and you're a part of something like that, the amount of accomplishment is extraordinary. Unfortunately, more often than not, the CEO doesn't spend enough time really getting under the hood and pulse checking what's going on in the way in which the objectives, agendas align to create that kind of a powerful organization. And anyone who's played on sports teams or been part of exciting shows or things like that, they know that when it all clicks towards a common set of goals and objectives, it's really amazing.
Yeah.
Now, I've experienced that personally about sort of 7-8 years ago. We had a CEO, and her name was Sharon Rowlands, and she did an amazing job of bringing together a management team. And it started with a common exercise around effectiveness, efficiency, that established a growth agenda for the organization. And the way in which everyone in these functions was created equal in the ability to communicate about each other's areas. And there was a respect in the room that allowed you to say things about other areas, including the people that worked in other areas. But it was also a glass houses thing. You gotta be careful. Nobody throws, if you have a glass house, don't throw rocks at other people's houses.
Right.
And this was one of the most powerful management teams that I was a part of because of a common goal driven by the CEO, a genuine caring for each other. And you described earlier, I would say that it's product and then it's marketing and then it's sales, and I understand the dimensions by which you were describing that. But it really is a continuum. And the continuum is the critical nature by which product people really can't sell.
Yeah.
And salespeople can't write code.
Right.
And so
Let's
you need
hope
to
not.
continue. Yes, true, exactly. And if they could, they would. We know that. To get that sale and to make that number, they do it all night long. But that's not how it works.
Yeah.
So when you get a powerful team. Now, I will also say, on the contrary, I've been a part of a number of very, very ill-aligned teams. And the dysfunctional dimensions that come out of that are consuming of people's energy, and they take the capacity of the organization way down in its ability to achieve goals.
Yeah. Okay. So let's unpack these a little bit. And I like you reframing this into a continuum. That's very well said. So the first kind of link in the chain in this continuum, if you will, is the relationship and the alignment between the CEO and the product group. And the product group has to make sure, or I should say the CEO has to make sure the product group is building products that solve real world problems for the market segments that the CEO has decided to go after. And in technology companies or services companies that are enabled through technology, you can spend 10, 15, 20, 25% of top line revenue in R&D. And sometimes what comes out of the product group are really cool products that the engineers are proud of that don't sell. So from your vantage point, and you've seen this many times, how does a CEO make sure and hold the product group accountable to not build what they think is neat, but build what they think the marketplace needs?
Well, CEOs have a problem from day one, which is what I call, who do you believe? Do you believe the product people? Do you believe the sales people? Do you believe the finance team? I mean, truthfully, what you want is to believe everybody. Yeah. And that takes proof points. And you were talking specifically about product. Yeah. It starts with a well-formulated product roadmap strategy that isn't 1 month out or 1 quarter out, but literally an 8-quarter plan that basically lays out a roadmap such that there can be belief in where the product vision is going. And there can be many test points by which the stakeholders come into that equation and believe in it. I think the other thing that's really important is the customer has all the answers. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean that organizations have a great opportunity in going out and talking to lots of customers, many of whom compete with each other and wouldn't share things very publicly, but they'll share things in the context of a product meeting or a sales and product meeting.
So is it the product group that's having that meeting with the customer? Is it the CEO? Is it both? Is it the same meeting? Is it different meetings?
The answer is yes.
Okay.
Product people must be out talking to customers. They must connect the dots on what they hear in multiple customers. That's where the customers have the answers. And the sales team wants to bring the answer back for one customer. Product's job is to bring the answer back for multiple customers. And the CEO's job is to test those proof points in all those areas, including the customer. Yeah. So if you remember when I said, who do you believe? Well, you want to believe the sales team, you want to believe the product team, and you want to believe the customer,
Yep.
and you want to bring that all together. And that's the umbrella by which the CEO, I think, has to drive that.
Yeah, okay. So let's go to the next link in the chain, if you will. So now it's the relationship between product and marketing. And you have marketing as part of your responsibility. So what I hear from product management leaders in particular is they say, we're building great products. The marketing team is not attracting the right buyers. They're doing a poor job running campaigns that illuminate the value proposition and the positioning of the product correctly. So since you own marketing, you're interfacing into the product management group, I'm assuming. And so what does that look like? Like what's the cadence there? Is it a weekly meeting, a daily meeting? Are you guys an agile shop?
We are.
You are an agile shop. So within the product
It's
group,
early days in our process of moving to agile, but we're an agile shop.
So they're running daily scrums, et cetera, things like that. So how does, within your company, and maybe even broader, with over your 20 plus years experience, how should that work, the relationship between product and marketing?
Well, I will say that the sibling rivalry that takes place across that continuum I mentioned before is quite deafening, and that's actually a good thing because you want to have productive friction going on across it, respectful but productive friction. And there's explanation and excuse. It's interesting that those two words start with the same beginning letters, but the ability to explain is really valuable. Product should explain what they're after clearly. Marketing should explain how they want to deliver against that result. And by the way, the next group in that continuum is sales. Right. So this concept, what I find to be the challenge in the marketplace is it moves to excuse really quickly. So, and the excuse can be in either direction because fingers get pointed and all of that. It really is about having a joined up, this goes back to the alignment in the beginning. If
so
you
all
really,
the way back up.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. There's this old expression that said we had a very successful removal of the appendix, but the patient died. It's like, okay, well, that's great. The appendix was taken out, but the heart stopped. I mean, that's not a successful operation. Yeah. And you could have the same dynamic with product releases. Well, we hit our deadlines. Okay, well, did you include all the product features that you said you would that were pre-marketed to hit and hit your deadline? Right. Great. Okay, did the go-to-market plan, which is so critical when you're doing a product launch. Yeah. It has to be aligned, it has to be energized. Marketing has to do its part. Marketing's part is what I describe as the shock and awe to freeze the marketplace, and then the sales organization goes in as the ground troops. Yeah. So it's really important that that gets joined up, and there shouldn't be room for excuse. There should be plenty of room for explanation, because explanation can be course-corrected. Excuse can't be.
Yeah. So let's talk about product launch. So in your experience, and maybe this is an unfair question, but I'd like to hear your opinion on it. When a product launch fails, so lots of money spent in development, new thing comes out, and it's a dud, no one's buying it. Is it because the marketing and sales team didn't do a good job pushing it into the marketplace, or is it because the product team built the wrong product? Is there an easy answer there?
The answer is most often there was some miss in the product creation. Mm-hmm. Now, coming from a sales guy, you might expect that. But the fact of the matter is, if it takes too long to get to market, the market can move on you. Yeah. And that's one of the things people have to be careful about. Yeah. I think you always have to go back to the basics when you have a failure in anything in business. Mm-hmm. It's a bit like if you're in a football game and you're down at the half, you want to win the second half. Yeah. And you got to go back to the basics of blocking and tackling. So when you have a situation like that, you go back to who were the key customers that we went to when we were doing our prototyping, when we were doing our spec designs. Let's go to them and see what they're saying. Mm-hmm. The dimension when you have a huge investment in there is nobody wants to declare failure. Mm-hmm. And actually the best thing to do is to create the elements of failure you can quickly and correct them. Mm-hmm. The hardest one is when you want to bail on the whole thing. And I was part of a $20 million marketing launch one time on a product that had principally hype. The context of it was good. It was a new product, but also was replacing some historical products. And we put $20 million out there to tell people it was great. And that works, by the way.
So $20 million in the marketing side.
$20 million just in marketing. Okay. The investment in the building of the product was well over $500 million. And it was about 25, 30 months in the making. And it was a real failure. And people were fired on that. And that clearly accountability is really important. They probably should have been fired much sooner. Mm-hmm. This is a breakdown of the pulse checks I talked about at the CEO level. Yeah. Pulse checks weren't taking place. The market validation wasn't taking place. The people closest to it, that were building it were scared, and the people closest to it who were responsible for delivering were very doubtful. These signs were all over the highway, and people didn't want to step up because, you know what, the CEO didn't want to hear it. The CEO was driving it and didn't want to tell the board that there was going to be problems.
Well, there's so much at stake.
Tons at stake.
Yeah.
And again, it didn't end well. And oftentimes the decisions you make today are the ones that are going to end in a good or bad way in a year or two down the road. And that's sort of how this all came about. Now, I'm very happy to say that there were discussions once this sort of all came to light of actually sunsetting and doing a write-off. Because the finance people came in and said, well, if this thing's never going to work, let's take the write-off. We'll do a one-time write-off. It'll be better for our margins, et cetera, in the near term. And when we got the right talent in the room and the right team, and it was me and the head of development who basically I said, look, stop adding features to this thing and just make what we have launched work. And it was really hard because there were a lot of product people that wanted their roadmap to be filled in. But the smartest thing we did was we grabbed the reins. We said, this is going to be really hard, but we can make this happen. We bet our careers on making it happen. And I think when we started that, we had sort of 5,000 to 8,000 users in the marketplace on it. We grabbed the reins, fixed the features that were problematic that were supposed to be in the offering. We got it to a better place. We ended up a year later with over 120,000 users.
In 1 year?
In 1 year. So it was a real course correction, but it took desperate action to do that. And the reason I bring that up is, like I said, it's very hard to declare failure. Humans don't like to declare failure. And I think oftentimes the human will and ability to overcome horrible circumstances like that is quite powerful. But something's got to be different. You can't just pretend and play because the game's up.
Yeah, interesting. All right, so let's stay on the continuum. So we started with the CEO to product, the product to marketing. That was a very insightful conversation. Now we're marketing to sales. So let's say marketing is doing its job. It's attracting all of these prospects, existing customers are interested in the new product, et cetera. And then the sales team is responsible for converting that demand into paying customers, right? So how does the marketing leader make sure that the sales team is holding up their end of the bargain?
Well, I happen to love the friction that goes on between marketing and sales. I do love it the most when I have both the CMO reporting to me and the head sales reporting to me.
It makes it easier.
It makes it easier.
Yeah.
And there's a little secret in that, is even when you have an organization as a CMO who's reporting to the CEO and a chief sales officer reporting to the CEO, the importance of that relationship, going back to alignment, is critical. Now, when it's the same person, as long as I don't get schizophrenic, I have the ability to really look at the dimensions of that and work to make it possible for marketing to be able to fulfill on its critical agenda items, its objectives, and make sure that sales is really straightforward. You make your number, you don't make your number. The marketing numbers are actually quite firm numbers, but on a relative basis, day in, day out, week in, week out, month in, quarter in, year out, they're a little harder. So you really look at what are the drivers, the lead gen tool, the closed loop marketing pieces, what's the feedback channel coming, and there's a real necessity for a partnership. One of my observations historically in this oversight is the amount of times that the CMO or the lead marketing head is walking into the offices of the primary sales management teams is an indicator of how well you're going to do. When you get them walking down the hall, working with each other, they'll find a way to solve the problem because they know they're both on the hook.
Yeah.
It relates a little bit to parenting for me. When my kids would get into a challenge, I wouldn't try to arbitrate. You can't win. You love them in different ways equally. Can't arbitrate. So you basically say, look, you're both going to go in this room and you're both going to stay in there until you can come out and we can agree that either you've sorted it out or you can tell me what went wrong. So you do the same thing with the marketing and sales function, and you get the accountability to be as shared as possible with clear objectives for each individual.
Do you think the marketing and sales leader need to work out of the same physical location? Does that matter?
I don't think that matters. No. I think we live in a world now of virtualness, and the necessity for people to be able to work in an environment of trust is we try to work with this theme in Broadridge called the speed of trust. And I find that it's very real, it's very relevant. In some cases, it's probably hyperbole, but most of the time, working at the speed of trust is that we're going to trust each other on the surface. And so you have to displace the vicinity with other mechanisms by which people work. FaceTime is very important. The ability for people to use modern telepresentations like that. You have to do that. But we have to live in a world. Remember, we also live in a very global world now. So in some cases, I've worked where I was in New York and the head of marketing was in London, and we had to find a way to work together.
Okay. So just before we go to break, there's one more link in the chain. Okay, so now it's sales, right? Which I'm not suggesting that's the last link, but they're interacting with the market, right? They're dealing with the customers, they're responding to the competitors, they're talking to prospects. So they are seeing whether or not this strategy, all of the strategies, the CEO strategy, the product strategy, the marketing strategy, the sales leader strategy, if it's resonating or not. So the sales leader oftentimes has to go back up the chain and go to each of those people and say, hey, we need to tweak here, we need to adjust this, this assumption was wrong. How does that work? Is that, sometimes I see sales leaders who have the information almost reluctant to share it, which is a shame.
Yeah, well, let me kind of step back for a second and describe the one party that I haven't talked much about that's the most important. It's the customer. Mm-hmm. So let's presume a CEO can create this powerful alignment I spoke about.
Okay.
And get almost their mafia of execution from their disciplines to deliver amazing results. Where's the objectivity in the equation? And I think the most important dimension of what you're just asking about is the customer experience, customer insight monitor. You've got to create, again, proof points that come in from independent, objective assessment of the customer's view. That can be of ongoing products. So one of the things at Broadridge that you mentioned, thank you, in that very kind opening was 98% retention rate. Yeah. It is substantive. Every associate in the organization has a part of their compensation tied to the customer acceptance. Everybody. Wow. It is basically part of the service profit chain that we run the business based on. And it's really quite powerful. But the ability to get customer experience objectively brought in is a tool by which what is typically the chief customer officer who is running sales and marketing has to have this tool. And what I think is the strongest unlimited credit card anybody in our chief revenue officer responsibility has is the customer. Yeah. When you walk in, you have this unlimited credit. It's it's American Express. There's no credit limit on this. I'm coming in with the customer, and the customer's told me this.
Yeah, so it's not your opinion.
It's not my opinion.
So that's the objectivity.
The objectivity is really critical, and that allows me to go into product as, hey, I'm not here to be disruptive to you. I'm not here to tell you you're not capable of doing it. I'm telling you this is what our marketplace is telling us. What are we? We is really important in a lot of these conversations. Going to do to make a difference around this data set.
Okay, great. Great stuff. We need to take a short break. After, I'm going to ask Chris to explain how to drive strategic alignment into the daily operating cadence. You won't want to miss this, so come back after the break.
This is not a table. It is a stage where your performance is measured in numbers. If you reach them, you get an encore. If you don't, it could be curtains. That's why you need the well-rehearsed, proven sales and marketing strategies of SBI.
Welcome back from the break. My name is Greg Alexander, and I'm the CEO of SBI, and you are watching SBI TV. I'm joined today by Chris Perry, the President of Global Sales, Marketing, and Client Solutions at Broadridge Financial Solutions. Before the break, Chris and I were discussing the challenges with getting the product team, the marketing department, and the sales force into strategic alignment with the CEO's strategy. And during this segment, I would like to turn our attention to Chris's operating cadence and how it might be an example for us to follow when pursuing strategic alignment. So Chris, let's kind of dive into specifics on how you spend your time. So you just ended your honeymoon period at Broadridge. You've been with the firm a little over 6 months, correct?
Correct.
Right. So that honeymoon period when you get hired is an interesting period. And then what happens after the honeymoon period we have seen is quite different. So describe for us, what a typical day may have looked like during the honeymoon period, and then contrast that with what does a typical day look like after the honeymoon period?
Sure. And let me say that's really important, Greg, is that before I even started, I was working on the plan.
Okay.
And I think anybody who takes on a new role in a very senior level, you must work on your 90-day plan. There's a number of great books out there on that subject. I happen to use one. George Brandt writes the New Leader 100-Day Plan
I love that
book. It's a great book. He's a great guy, really helpful, but it lets you think about the key stakeholders. So I already walked in with a bit of a plan. Obviously, it needed some adjustment as I learned more, because you have to go in like, I don't know anything. And I have some pedigree and some background from experience, but I don't know anything. You're a new organization and you have different needs and demands and wants, and I'll use the skill sets that I have to help with those things and be a part of it. But it started with that plan. Then during the honeymoon period, it was really important for me to...
Let me interrupt you for a second.
Please.
Yeah, so you said something that was really interesting there. So you had 20 plus years with Thomson Reuters, okay? And you go into Broadridge. So how similar or different are those two businesses?
Well, they're similar in that they serve financial services professionals in the marketplace, but they're really quite different in the way in which Broadridge itself was an IPO that came out of a large company.
Okay.
Thomson Reuters was a merger of two big companies, so their cultures were quite different.
Okay. And you took the time to develop a plan before you started, okay? And you did that with this methodology, which is great. So when you showed up, how much of what you did in your past did you carry forward with you into the new job? Or did you say to yourself, which is what I thought I just heard, and this is the reason why I wanted to clarify this, I'm going to go in and assume I know nothing, and really open your mind up to maybe I should do things differently here given the situation?
You're going to find the answer quite interesting. I carry 120% of what I've done the last 25 years in as the tools of what I know is going to create success. Now, having said that, I draw the line. The last thing that I wanted, and I would urge anyone to take this thought process, is to walk in and have people think that I know everything. It's the worst thing in the world when you take a successful company. I mean, it's not broken. It's a pretty successful company I was walking into. What I was there to do was to take it to the next level and be part of an existing team who needs some new ideas, needs some new experience to be able to do that. But the most important thing was to walk in and not act like where I did it before was the way everything should be done.
Okay. That was helpful to clarify. Okay, so it's not like you threw away your 20 plus years experience. I mean, that was probably the reason why you got the job, and the person who hired you was hoping you were going to bring that to the table. But you didn't come in with this arrogant approach, which sometimes people do, and say, this is the way it's going to be, I'm the new chief in town. You dialed that down a little bit. And
No, I dialed it all the way down.
All the way down.
What I don't want is people to want me to fail. I mean, in life, you have to understand that there are people that want you to fail because they're jealous or whatever it is. Yeah. No, I want to come in as someone who's part of the way in which we are going to be successful. Yeah. When you're the new person, nobody trusts you yet. They don't know you. They don't have your experience. And you come from a place where you were 20 years, where literally everybody comes to you for thoughts, help, advice, and they trust you. Yeah. So I'm trying to recreate that same dynamic, but bringing every bit of experience I have. That's what they bought, in bringing me, was they bought all that experience to be applied in the right way in the culture, which I need to learn. So that's before I even sort of started, or the first 30 days.
Okay, so now you're there.
Yep.
And we're talking about the honeymoon period. How you spent your time in the honeymoon period versus post-honeymoon period. So forgive me, pick up where we left off.
Sure. Well, the honeymoon period was really three important dynamics in that. One was to create an agenda for the beginning, which I'll talk about. The second one was to meet and have face time with many people at many, many levels of the organization to show that I'm a human being and I can listen and I can learn. And the third thing was the identified stakeholders before I started. Who were the key members of the executive committee that I should be developing relationships with and getting dinners with them, things like that, just to create an ability to be known to them, as opposed to, this is the foreign person who's here and could potentially shake up our mojo, which again was going very well. So in those three categories, in the first category, I decided largest customers, very important. I decided marketing, really important. I decided that this new function called solutions that was created about a year earlier, and it was somewhat controversial in its traction. Get into that. I decided that it was really important for me to get what I call the learning and development of Chris. So me doing lots and lots of one-to-ones with people, getting product people coming in, doing demonstrations. So the education of Chris, so that I actually knew what we were about. Those were four of the critical things that I felt. And last one was learning and development. I'm a really big advocate of the fact that learning and development is really important. A lot of people like to call it training. I think that's for dogs and animals. Learning and development is what humans want to do. And so I felt very strongly that for us to take it to the next level, we would need a really strong learning and development agenda to make that possible, and onboarding capabilities for new hires as we were bringing them in, all linked together. So that was really a lot about what my honeymoon period was about. Okay. and a fairly substantial amount of engagement with the CEO and a bit of engagement with the board, so the board knew. The thing that is important for me to describe in terms of my agenda is basically to double sales. So the agenda of why I was brought in and under what dimensions of metric success will I be measured is, can we double sales, $120 million to $240 million over the next 3 years? It's a pretty big challenge when the trailing growth rate was 4-ish, 5-ish%.
And what's the growth rate in the industry in general?
It varied on the back of the crisis. I think if you think about pre-crisis rates, people were growing at sort of circa 8%. During the crisis, many were negative and had to recover from the crisis. Now that we're 5 years sort of past the crisis, the range is sort of about 2 to 10. And we're in the 4-ish range. We want to get to the 20-ish% range on sales. Revenues would be about half of that. Think about a flow through about half of that.
Yeah. Okay. So the double in 3 years is a big goal.
It is a very large, lofty goal, and just because the CEO gets up on a stage and declares we will double sales does not mean it's going to happen.
Yeah. All right, so now post-honeymoon.
Yep.
Okay, so I understand all that. That was a great 5-point explanation as to how to spend your honeymoon period. I particularly liked how you owned your own development, your own onboarding, so to speak, versus relying on the company to do that. So I thought that was really great. So post-honeymoon, is it the same or is it different?
No, it's actually transferred now. And so let me say the first thing is that I actually walked in on the week of my 6th month and said to my directs, my honeymoon's over, your honeymoon's over. Because actually it's a two-way street.
Yeah.
And it's time for the gloves to come off a bit. And let's talk a lot more about accountability and results. Yep. We're really building now for next year's numbers. That doesn't mean take your eye off the ball at all. That means this year's number is really important because we got to make it to next year. Yep. But we're really working now because to double sales, that means we have to be building pipeline that's going to be related to next year's sales activity. So I declared honeymoon's over for everybody. The second thing, which is really the more substantive thing that I had been setting the foundation for over the prior months was, well, how do you double sales? I've got to boil it into a set of language that's understandable at every level. The most intelligent of the organization and probably those people who are more focused on their own principal need and less interested in the broader scope. So I boiled it into 4 tools, levers, if you will, to double sales. The first level is effectiveness. You get more out of the resources that you have. Yep. Not that complicated. I think you guys know a lot about that. The second one is expansion. So effectiveness, expansion. Well, we can expand our resources. We can go into new markets. We can expand the number of feet on the street. If we get some effectiveness improved and that translates into the expansion, that's great. So those were 2. Okay. Very much in the responsibility set of the global sales, marketing, and solutions management team. The other 2 are innovation. Innovate new products, create new innovative ways of selling things, but anything to do with innovation, principally new product launches. And then the last one is acquisition. Yeah. So you grow by either being more effective with what you have, having more people, innovating new product, or you acquire assets. And the last 2 are very much a partnership. So this goes back to alignment, things we've talked about before, is I'm in partnership on the innovation. I'm in partnership as a supporting dynamic driver of acquisition because those are done through the BUs. But in effectiveness and in expansion, those are my lead responsibilities.
Interesting. Okay. So let's come back to the topic of strategic alignment, okay? And we just discussed how alignment your responsibility for alignment and how you obtain alignment changes honeymoon period and post-honeymoon period. So let's shift the conversation now to post-honeymoon period exclusively. How often do you meet with your CEO and what do you guys talk about?
We meet pretty regularly. We are both busy in multiple directions, and we have set on the calendar every other week 90-minute kind of windows. Okay. They tend to be corrupted with some different things, so they end up being a pretty good hour, and then we pick up the phone on some ancillary kind of things in between. But the critical connectivity is so important, and early in the relationship with an amazing CEO who has great foresight. One of the things that's most important in life is to work for people you can learn from. And I felt one of the reasons to change after 20 years was I needed somebody that I could learn from, particularly if I want to be the CEO of a business at some point.
Is that one of the reasons why you took the job?
It was. It was a real driver. The CEO is an individual who has been immensely successful, doesn't need to work as hard as he's working, and could cruise, if you will. And the last thing that he's doing his cruising. In fact, he's trying to make it better, and he's trying to grow, and he's trying to even develop himself, which is really powerful. So that was inspiring to me, and I joined because I wanted somebody I could learn from, and I'm finding that to be great. But early in our discussions, I said to him, I'm going to charge hard. I'm going to probably break a bit of china around the store, but you tell me if I've taken that too far.
Okay.
And his message back to me was, I want you to do that. I want you to be somewhat, we'll call it provocative in the equation, and bring that. And so we had this kind of agreement that if I'm getting too provocative, he could certainly, throttle me in different directions, but it's driving an ability to accelerate.
Yep.
Because we want to go. This doubling is going to happen. The question is, will it happen over 10 years, or will it happen over 3 or 4?
Got it.
And I'm trying to drive it to happen over 3 or 4. And by the way, everybody wins.
Yep.
One really important thing in developing the relationship is to agree on some common things that everybody can get behind. So for me, that common thing was our share price and our size. So people that are my peers can disagree with me on methodology or priorities or whatever it is. But when we can find something we can commonly agree upon, which is a share price of 75.
Yep.
Today we're trading around 53. When I joined, we were around 39. But whenever we sort of disagree, go, look, we're both trying to get to $75 share price.
Right.
Let's talk about how we get there. So the CEO blessed that concept, and regular meetings, we continue with regular meetings, regular connectivity. I also want to say that I have very regular meetings with many of my peers.
Yeah, that was my next question. Yeah.
Because it's not an isolation.
Yeah.
See, the misalignment takes place when the CEO is spending all their time with one person.
Yeah.
And so what you want is, the CEO's job is, I think, a balance. They have to choose that balance. My job is to enable the balance also, to make sure that I'm triangulating relationships all the time.
Yeah.
One of the things that I used to hate the most was, well, I met with the CEO wherever I've been in the past, and they said this. I'm like, really? Well, why don't we go talk to him? Because I'm not sure that's what I understood. If that's the case, that's great. But I don't want to, not that I don't trust you. It's like my interpretation is sort of different about that. So triangulating relationships where you're transparent. Hey, I met with the CEO. Here's what we talked about. By the way, here's the implications, I think, on the things you and I are doing together. Do you agree, not agree? What do you think we should course correct? Maybe we should go talk to make sure we're circling that thing.
Okay. So that was my next question. So you have your formal meeting every other week with the CEO, and it sounds like in between those meetings there's lots of informal kind of catch up via telephone, things like that. And then your strategies are in sync. Your strategy and the CEO strategy in sync. And then you go to your peers, which could be the CFO, could be the head of products, could be IT, HR, whoever. And you're weaving that through all of those different functional groups to make sure you stay in alignment. Did I capture that correctly?
You did.
Okay, very good. Now, I want to dive one level below now, right? So you have both sales and marketing, and you have vice presidents of sales and marketing that report into you. It's senior leaders in your organization that report into you, right? And sometimes this issue of strategic alignment is particularly challenging in sales and marketing, as we talked about earlier. You're sitting over the two of them, and your job now is almost like a CEO, is to drive alignment with them. So how often do you meet with them together? And what do you talk about? How often do they meet by themselves without you? And what do they talk about?
It really is one of the challenging things because there's a level of passive aggressiveness that comes out in human beings when they want to impress someone. Yeah. And oftentimes they will want to impress someone, in a sense, at the expense of someone else. And one of the things I've tried to drive throughout my career is that the enemy's on the outside, not inside. Yeah. And it's really hard to change that philosophy because in colleges, if you look at kids today competing to get into colleges, I mean, it's all about beating the person next to you. Yeah. So it's nothing but rivalry and competition. It's over the top. When you get into a company, it's all about the company being successful, not each individual. And so I try to drive that theme in my management team. Now, I meet with my team every other week, Monday mornings, 8 o'clock. I think cadence is really important. I think while our people are coming in after the weekend, trying to figure out where their desk is again and get back to work, it's really important the management team is actually already there and it knows what it needs to go work on. So that's my cadence around my direct team, and I have some virtual members of the team who report into different lines, but sort of dot line into to my world.
Is it the same? So I love the Monday morning, 8 o'clock every other week. Don't miss that meeting, it sounds like. The content of the meeting, is it the same or does it change week to week?
The methodology is very similar. The content changes a bit by the demands of insight. It's a two-way street. There are people who want to get in front of the sales organization or get in front of sales and marketing and brief us on things. So we invite them in with some level of structure. You can't just kind of show up and get time. But one of the tools that you have in sales and marketing as it relates to meeting with other of the functions is that they do want sales to be enabled. It's kind of an interesting thing. When you want to go talk to them about product and why product is challenging, they don't really want to meet that much. I hate to say it. But when they want you to drive product and drive the sales execution of the product, they want to meet. So you want that conversation going. It's quite healthy. But I will go back to that kind of passive aggressiveness that takes place in the team. When you bring them together, one of the biggest objectives is to continue to create the alignment of commonality and ensure that you hold up people who are doing really good examples of that in that room to say, hey, I want to let so-and-so talk about this really great thing that is showing. And interestingly enough, sometimes the reason that is because a week earlier you heard somebody saying, well, I don't see anything coming out of the solutions team, or I don't see anything coming out of the global accounts team, or, well, let's get in the room because I have that lens, because people are giving me that lens because they know that it's important for me to have it, but they aren't necessarily giving it to their colleagues.
Yeah, that was my question, right? My next question, which is, so you're driving through this Monday morning 8 o'clock meeting, the fact that everyone's communicating and we're staying towards the goal of doubling in 3 years and a $79 stock price, right? After that, so you leave and you have your leadership team on their own. Are they meeting outside of that meeting? Do you know what's going on in that meeting? Do you want to know what's going on in the meeting? I mean, how has the your ability to drive alignment permeated through the organization?
Well, I love the question and the thought process, and I'll describe why. The penultimate environment for me that I've ever been in is one where the meetings take place when I'm not there.
Yeah. And
I have to say it's been infrequently that I've been able to create such an environment. And again, it's not but I have to sponsor the dynamic. I mean, it's unfortunately most often it's like, oh, well, Chris is on vacation this week or he's traveling, so I don't know if we're having a meeting. Like, no, that's not it. It's not about me. It's about what we are trying to do. So for me, the penultimate dimension is when you walk into that room and no one really knows who's the senior person. There's actually healthy conversation going on that people feel they get their ability to communicate in there. It's a forum. And it's a forum to enable the success that the team would share in, not sort of the individuals. Now, like I said, it's hard to create that. It takes quite a lot. It takes the right personalities, the right genuine caring for each other. And I'm a ways away from being able to do that where I am now, but it's only been 6 months. So my hope will be to create that. I have created that before, where the meetings, in fact, many respects, the meetings are better when you're not there because the organization has to step up and play both the part you play and their own responsibilities.
You know, that's an interesting point. You know, I like to classify that as the difference between working in the business and working on the business. And sometimes we over-rotate. You know, sometimes, especially sales leaders, you know, they stick their face in the forecast and they say, I got to make this number this quarter. And all of the bigger initiatives that might be related to 2 years from now or even a year from now, they neglect.
Sure.
And sometimes marketing leaders do the same thing. You know, their campaign is particularly important to them. What's happening in the sales force, maybe not so much. What's happening in the product group, maybe not so much. And if we're not careful, we spend all our time working in the business and not any time working on the business. And finding the balance between the two is really important. So
it's critical. And I talked to you about the 4 levers: effectiveness, expansion, innovation, and acquisition. But you have to have a methodology by which you do, I describe it as run the business, evolve the business. Evolution is far better than transformation. You're going to have many people talk about transformational sales things. Just one person's opinion. Transformation is really painful, and leave it for blood transfusion or something like that. People like to evolve. They want to be a part of their environment. And so for me, it's run the business, which is hit the number, hit this forecast. You got to run all the dimensions of what needs to be done here and now, because you've got to survive and ideally thrive into the future. But if you just do that, the future visions that need to come to fruition won't happen.
They don't come.
Spend your time on evolving next to running.
Yeah, very good. Okay. Listen, we're going to take a short break, but stick around, because when we come back, I'm going to ask Chris to help give me and you an action plan. My hunch is you're going to want to emulate Chris. But right now you might be asking yourself, how do I even get started? So stick around and we'll tell you what to do when you get back.
Your finish line is your number, and the only way to reach it is to make certain everyone is pulling their weight and headed in the same direction. That's why SBI uses proven techniques to bring everyone on your team on board with successful, standardized sales programs, enabling victory at the turn of every quarter.
Welcome back, everyone. I am Greg Alexander, CEO of SBI, and you are watching SBI TV. Today, my guest is Chris Perry, President of Global Sales, Marketing, and Client Solutions for Broadridge. Before the break, I made you a promise, and that promise was to have Chris and I give you an action plan for getting the product team, the marketing department, and the sales force into alignment with the CEO's strategy. So what is an action plan? In the context of this show, it's simply the 1 to 3 things to do immediately after watching the show to help you make your number. So let's get started. So Chris, I'm gonna give you a hypothetical situation. The phone rings and it's your CEO. And he says, Chris, I have a new strategy and I need your help getting it implemented. The next day you find yourself in a boardroom with the CEO and all of his direct reports, CFO, CIO, head of HR, etc. And he rolls out the new strategy and looks at the team and says, okay, I need your help getting this implemented, and everybody needs to retool their strategy as a result of that. Your job in this hypothetical situation is to come up with a new marketing and sales strategy to reflect the new CEO strategy. So in that context, what do you do first?
First thing you do is get the team together and get buy-in from the team on that strategy. Now, there's 2 dimensions to that. One is, do we have the ability to influence this strategy or not? And actually, it's best to get to the punchline.
Yeah.
I suspect they were influencing it. Let's presume that.
Yeah, let's presume that you were involved in the creation of it.
Yeah, and so it's like go time, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, is everybody bought in? Is there any doubts in anyone's mind?
Yep.
So that's the first thing, is buy-in is really important, because whatever you're doing in your team, you're going to then have to go do in the masses.
Yeah.
So you get the buy-in. The second thing is, what's each of our roles in making this happen? How do we make the number related to this new strategy that we are about to embark upon? One tool you have in that is the excitement that is being part of something new. One tool that works against you is the fear of this is something new and different. And change is really hard for those people who are dictated to change. It's very easy for those who are dictated to change. So what you really want to try to do is get that group of people to feel a part of this new change that they're going to make.
Okay.
So that's the first part, and their ownership in the context of delivering against this set of goals and objectives.
Okay, so get buy-in. Make sure everybody understands it, reduce the fear associated with change, don't be a dictator, et cetera.
And each individual, what's your role in executing that? And you ask the question, what's your role in executing the strategy? What's your role in executing the strategy? You go around the table doing that.
Yep. Now, this show, we've been talking about strategic alignment. So when this happens, there's a ripple effect, right? So next thing you know, the finance team has to retool their strategy. The product team needs to retool their strategy. Maybe the IT team has to retool their entire strategy. And there you are, retooling the marketing and sales strategy. So that's a lot of moving pieces. I mean, it's almost like you're building a plane, at 38,000 feet, right? How do you do that?
Well, sales and marketing has a really critical role to play in that, because if sales and marketing doesn't believe in the retool strategy, let me tell you, the others are going to not, they're going to be doubtful.
Yep.
And that's why in this buy-in process, as I said in the first stage, there's a little bit of cathartic dimensions you need to have in there so people get some things off their chest. But you want to lead the company. The beauty of being in a sales and marketing function is you actually lead the company. You're kind of the CEO of your area, and you have to lead the company forward. And if you can demonstrate to the finance professionals and the product teams that you want to lead forward into this sort of unknown, maybe even quite risky phenomenon, it will create a lot of confidence. It'll create a lot of alignment and shared vision.
Yep. Okay, so let's go to an area of conflict, right? Because in a perfect world, it flows like that, and that would be great, right? But let's talk about a typical scenario. So you got to double the company in 3 years. This is the strategy. You guys want to take the share price to $79, hopefully even greater than that. And you gave us your 4 things that you can do. One of those things was expansion, right? Which means maybe you're going to hire some more people. So you have funding needs. The CFO, maybe he has a profit target that says, I'm not funding any more sales heads. So now the 2 of you are in conflict. You both have the same goal, Try to get that share price of 79 bucks, which is going to be driven based on earnings. But you need more feet on the street, which costs money to make it happen, and he doesn't want to give them to you. So walk me through that.
Yeah. Well, I love that problem. I'll describe why I love that problem. I mean, we live in a world of data analytics. We are data-driven today, and we have the ability to pull data in and compute. So that's one tool. The second tool, and then I'll give you my little hint in the end. The second tool that you have is salespeople pay for themselves. I mean, tell me what other function the organization pays for itself. So if you have metrics and data, and the data can describe what I call an accountability matrix or an allocation of resource matrix, which we use in a very deep, detailed way, you will then see the opportunity, the white space and territory, or expanding into new geos, whatever it might be. And then you make your statement that says, okay, I'm looking at where we are. There's a long way away from point of diminishing returns, because there's diminishing returns on anything. But salespeople pay for themselves. So let me show you that. Now, you do that with data. You do that with the metrics associated with current performance. And then the little hint is, any CFO who doesn't take that challenge, because it's a noose around the neck of the head of sales, right? If it doesn't work, right? And I've been in a situation where I was convincing people, like, we need more feet on the street. We need more feet on the street. That's our answer. And then I finally had a breakthrough one time. This is one time in my career where the person came in like it was his idea. Which is always the best way in the world. It's like, what if you added a bunch more salespeople to this? Really?
Really? Tell me more about that.
Yeah, that's really good. No, the challenge for me was when I went back to my team and I said, well, we need to do an analysis within X period of time on how many more heads we could hire to be able to fulfill on this. The team went, really? I don't have any more territory to give. Well, that's how that works. That's the job of sales and marketing management.
Okay, good example. All right, so now everyone at the executive level, maybe even a level down from that, is in alignment. Everybody has a retooled strategy, and now the employees show up for work and somebody has to tell them what to do to bring the new strategy to life. So that's a communication challenge, because sometimes as a message flows downward, it gets distorted. And if those people that are doing the jobs, your sales team, your marketing team that's engaging with customers, and they actually don't know what to do, good luck on executing that strategy. So what is the communication plan there?
Communicate, and when you're done communicating, start communicating again. It is all about getting engagement. We're fortunate where I work at Broadridge, we have very good engagement scores. We have people who really believe that there's an element of family in the organization, and the success has driven a lot from that. But I've also been in places where that wasn't quite the case. In fact, a lot of cynicism was in the field and in the marketplace. But you have to get out with the platform, as simplified as you can. One of the hardest terminations I've ever had to do in my career, and I've done, unfortunately, many based on principally performance. But the hardest one that I've ever done was somebody who had a Stanford MBA and a Harvard undergrad. Great person. Problem was the person communicated at a level that was intimidating. Nice person. Wasn't the style. It was literally the messaging was sort of up here. And the people on the ground could not understand how they played in the delivery of that. So when you go out and communicate, you got to get on the level of that person. And that is, here's the high level messaging, here's why we matter in the marketplace on this strategy, and here's what your part of that is in your role, and let me show you why this will be better for you and your persona in the future. That
was my next question. So you take the time, when you say communicate at that level, that's not derogatory in any way, that's job function related. So here's what's in it for you by executing the strategy. This is why this is a good thing for you.
It is, and it's not derogatory at all. It's actually caring. You care enough to describe to someone in the role they play how important it is. You've heard stories of companies before where, the janitor and the way the janitor was cleaning the restrooms was how that person felt they helped sales. They helped that company perform. We all have janitorial roles in a way. So we need to be enabled like that, and it's communication. I mean, the thing that I find is really difficult is people want to blame frontline salespeople or frontline employees for failures or lack of success. And I'll tell you, it's middle management not communicating, and it's executive management not understanding how they have to enable middle management to communicate.
So you talked about communicate. All forms, face-to-face, telephone, email, web conferences, et cetera. Is there a preference? I mean, what are your thoughts there?
Well, I think it's all forms, but let me describe the one faux pas. Propaganda is overrated. Propaganda creates failure. So make it real, make it meaty. All forms, balance it out. We are in a world of information overload, trying to keep track of what your kids have going on, your partner has going on, and your workplace, and the things you like to do for yourself is really hard. So you want to balance all of that, and I always find that in my management team, I like, what are the 5 things people need to know? People usually are good at 3s. I don't know if you know the expression, but there are 3 reasons why. There are 3 whatever. So what are the 5, and let's tell them the 3. And if you leave this meeting today with only 3 things, it's this, and by the way, if it's 1, it's this. And that's the way you want to get the message across. And again, using all forms, because the brain can then react in different ways to those forms.
So that's an example of an action plan. So what are the 5 and what 3 are we going to tell them, right? That's a great example. So you are an inspiration. You are a rare leader who can pivot between being a strategist and a tactician. Too much tactician, maybe you might hit the number this year, but you'll miss it next, and you'll be up, down, up, down, up, down. Too much strategist, you take your eye off the ball on the immediate goal, and you're always thinking about 3 years down the road, and sometimes those people get called empty suits. And you're able to go back and forth between the two, which is going to inspire our audience. So thanks for sharing that wisdom. I would also like to thank you, our viewers, for tuning in. If you enjoyed this show, I suggest you subscribe to SBI TV, and you can find us at salesbenchmarkindex.com/TV. Or you can find us at our YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and search for SBI. We have some outstanding guests confirmed for future episodes that I think you're not going to want to miss. So until then, I wish you the best of luck as you try to make your number.